What you're about to witness is the most powerful moment of respect and recognition ever captured in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. When this homeless 71-year-old man shuffled through those courtroom doors wearing a tattered military jacket and carrying everything he owned in a garbage bag, nobody expected what would happen next. But when Judge Caprio looked up and saw the faded medals pinned to that worn jacket, he did something that stopped the entire courtroom cold. What happened next would not only bring grown men to tears, but expose a national tragedy about how America treats the heroes who sacrificed everything for our freedom and spark a movement that would change the lives of thousands of forgotten veterans across the country. This story shows us what happens when a decorated war hero falls through the cracks of a society that promised to care for him. When a parking ticket becomes a window into decades of neglect and broken promises, and when one judge decides that some debts can never be repaid, but they can at least be acknowledged with the dignity and honor they deserve. But before we dive into this heartbreaking case that will restore your faith in humanity while breaking your heart at the same time, less than 1% of you watching are actually subscribed. So please hit that subscribe button, because this story about a forgotten veteran and the judge who refused to forget him deserves to reach everyone who needs to be reminded that we owe our freedom to people we pass on the street every day without even seeing them. It's a cold Thursday morning in early November, just days before Veterans Day, and Providence Municipal Court is handling its usual docket with quiet efficiency. The late autumn air outside carries the first real bite of winter, and inside the courthouse, people huddle in their coats waiting for their cases to be called. The morning has been routine parking violations, minor traffic infractions, the typical parade of small legal troubles that fill municipal courts across America. Judge Frank Caprio sits behind his bench, reviewing files, his reading glasses perched on his nose, his expression carrying that characteristic mixture of patience and compassion that has made him beloved by millions. At 78 years old, he's seen thousands of cases, heard every excuse, witnessed every kind of human struggle. But in the next 20 minutes, he's about to encounter a case that will shake him to his core and remind him why he dedicated his life to compassionate justice. At exactly 10:15 a.m., the courtroom doors open slowly, almost hesitantly, and through them shuffles a man who looks like he's carrying the weight of the entire world on his bent shoulders. The temperature in the courtroom seems to drop, not from cold, but from the profound sadness that walks in with him. James William Patterson, a 71-year-old homeless veteran, moves with the painful deliberation of someone whose body has been broken by war, poverty, and decades of sleeping on concrete. He's painfully thin, his weathered face deeply lined with wrinkles that tell stories of suffering no person should endure. His gray hair is long and unkempt, his beard scraggly and unwashed. But what captures everyone's attention, what makes several people in the courtroom straighten up and take notice, is the jacket he's wearing. It's an old military field jacket, olive green and faded by years of sun and rain, worn so thin in places that the fabric is nearly transparent. The jacket is too big for his diminished frame, hanging loose on his shoulders like he's a child wearing his father's clothes. But pinned to the chest, carefully positioned despite the jacket's worn condition, are military medals, a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, a Vietnam Service Medal, campaign ribbons that indicate multiple deployments. These aren't replicas or costume pieces, these are real medals, tarnished with age but positioned with obvious pride. James carries a black garbage bag in one hand, not because he's being disrespectful, but because it contains everything he owns in the world: a change of clothes, a blanket, a battered photo album. The entire sum of his possessions fits in a single trash bag. In his other hand, he clutches a crumpled citation, the paper worn from being folded and unfolded dozens of times, as if he's been staring at it trying to figure out how to handle this situation. What strikes everyone most powerfully isn't James's obvious poverty or his military decorations. It's the expression on his face, profound shame, deep embarrassment. The look of a man who once stood tall and proud in that uniform, who served his country with honor, and who now has to stand in a courtroom as a homeless man facing charges he can barely understand. His eyes stay fixed on the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze, as if he's trying to make himself invisible despite standing in the middle of a public courtroom. James moves to the back of the gallery and sits in the last row, as far from the front as possible, trying to disappear into the corner. He doesn't belong here, his body language says. He doesn't deserve to take up space. He's just a forgotten man with a parking ticket he can't pay, hoping somehow this will all go away without too much attention. What James doesn't know is that the moment Judge Caprio saw those medals on his jacket, everything changed. The judge's hand stopped moving across the paperwork. His eyes focused intently on the man in the military jacket sitting in the back row. And in Judge Caprio's mind, already forming before the case is even called, is the understanding that this isn't just another parking violation. This is a window into a national tragedy that plays out every single day in every American city. James is here because 2 weeks ago, he received a citation for sleeping in his vehicle, which was parked overnight in a commercial loading zone. The violation occurred behind a shopping center where James had been living in his 1987 Chevrolet sedan for the past 3 years. The fine is $75 plus court, costs a total of $125. For most people, an annoying but manageable expense. For James, it might as well be $1 million. He survives on $850 a month in disability benefits from the VA. After he pays for the medication that keeps his heart beating and his diabetes under control, he has maybe $200 a month for everything else: food, gas for the car he lives in, the occasional shower at a truck stop. But James insisted on appearing in court. When a social worker at the VA hospital suggested she could help him request a payment plan, he refused. When she offered to appear on his behalf, he said no. "This is my responsibility," he told her quietly. "I broke the law. I need to face the consequences." That's what we did in the Marines. We took responsibility for our actions. So despite the humiliation, despite knowing he has no money to pay the fine, despite understanding that appearing in court means every person in that room will see how far he's fallen, James came. Because 50 years ago, the Marine Corps taught him about duty, honor, and taking responsibility. And even though the country he served has forgotten him, he hasn't forgotten those values. What James doesn't realize is that his sense of duty and honor is about to collide with Judge Caprio's sense of gratitude and justice in a way that will change both their lives forever. The morning proceeds with routine cases. Each time the clerk calls a name, James tenses slightly, dreading the moment when he'll have to stand up and walk to the front of the courtroom where everyone can see him, where everyone can smell the fact that he hasn't showered in days, where everyone will judge him for being a homeless man who couldn't figure out how to take care of himself after the war ended. Finally, at 10:45, the clerk calls his case. James William Patterson, parking violation. James stands slowly, his joints protesting, and begins the long walk from the back of the courtroom to the defendant's stand. Every step feels like a mile. Every person's eyes feel like judgment. He keeps his head down, clutching his garbage bag as he has nowhere else to put it, moving with the careful deliberation of someone who's used to being told he doesn't belong anywhere. Judge Caprio looks up from his paperwork, and the moment his eyes focus on James, really see him take in the medals, the garbage bag, The profound sadness radiating from this broken man, his entire demeanor changes. The routine efficiency of processing another parking ticket vanishes. Judge Caprio sets down his pen slowly, removes his reading glasses, and for several long seconds, he simply looks at James with an expression that mixes respect, sorrow, and barely contained emotion. Mr. Patterson, Judge Caprio's voice is gentle, almost reverent. Before we discuss your case, I need to ask you something. Did you serve in the military? James finally looks up, surprised by the question and the tone. Yes, sir. United States Marine Corps, 1,969 to 1,973. 2 tours in Vietnam. Judge Caprio stands up from his bench, something that almost never happens. The courtroom goes absolutely silent. Every person present senses they're witnessing something extraordinary. Mr. Patterson, Judge Caprio says, his voice thick with emotion, on behalf of this court, on behalf of the city of Providence, and on behalf of a grateful nation, I want to thank you for your service and your sacrifice. James stands frozen, completely unprepared for this response. He came expecting to be judged, to be sentenced, to be dismissed as just another homeless person who broke the law. He didn't expect respect. He didn't expect gratitude. He didn't expect to be seen as anything other than the failure he believes he is. Sir, James's voice cracks. I'm just here about a parking ticket. I know I was wrong. I'll pay whatever I need to pay. I just need time because I don't have. Mr. Patterson, please. Judge Caprio interrupts gently. Tell me what happened. Why were you sleeping in your car in that parking lot? James looks down at the garbage bag in his hands, shame flooding his face. Sir, I don't have anywhere else to sleep. I live in my car, have for about 3 years now. I try to park in different places so I don't bother anyone. But that night I was parked behind the shopping center, and I guess somebody called the police. Judge Caprio's hands grip the edge of his bench, his knuckles white. Mr. Patterson, you're a decorated veteran. I can see your medals, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. You served our country with honor. How did you end up homeless? James's voice becomes quiet, the words heavy with years of accumulated pain. Sir, when I came back from Vietnam in '73, things were hard. People weren't kind to Vietnam vets back then. Called us baby killers, spit on us. I had nightmares, couldn't sleep, started drinking to quiet the noise in my head, lost jobs because I couldn't focus, lost my wife because I wasn't the man she married anymore, lost my kids because I couldn't be the father they needed, lost my house because I couldn't keep up with payments. And then I was just lost. Been lost for a long time now. The courtroom is absolutely silent except for the sound of people trying not to cry. Several spectators are wiping their eyes. Court officers stand with their heads bowed. Even the court reporter has stopped typing, listening to a story that represents thousands of veterans across America who came home from war only to lose the battle with civilian life. Judge Caprio's voice breaks when he speaks again. Mr. Patterson, what you're describing isn't failure. It's what happens when our country asks young men to do terrible things in war, then abandons them when they come home broken. You didn't lose your life. We failed to help you rebuild it. James looks up, tears streaming down his weathered face. Sir, I appreciate that, but I'm still here for breaking the law. I parked illegally. I was sleeping in a commercial zone. I know the rules, and I broke them. Just tell me what I owe, and I'll figure out how to pay it. Judge Caprio shakes his head slowly, visibly moved. Mr. Patterson, before we discuss your citation, I need everyone in this courtroom to understand something. This man standing before us is a hero. He volunteered to serve his country during a deeply unpopular war. He went to Vietnam not once, but twice, and fought in some of the most brutal combat American soldiers have ever faced. He earned a Purple Heart, which means he was wounded in combat, and a Bronze Star, which is awarded for heroic service. He did everything his country asked of him, and then his country forgot about him. Judge Caprio looks out at the courtroom, his voice strengthening. Every American in this room owes their freedom to men like Mr. Patterson. We sleep safely in our beds. We raise our families in peace. We live in a free society because men and women like James Patterson were willing to sacrifice their youth, their health, and in many cases their lives for our freedom. And this is how we repay that service: by citing him for sleeping in his car, by charging him money he doesn't have for the crime of having nowhere else to go. And guys, if this story isn't already breaking your heart, if you're not already feeling the injustice of a decorated war hero being homeless and forgotten, please hit that like button. What Judge Caprio does next, and the national movement, this case will prove that sometimes one judge can't fix a broken system, but he can shine a light on it in a way that forces everyone to pay attention. Judge Caprio sits back down and picks up James's file, reviewing it carefully. Mr. Patterson, according to this citation, you were parked in a loading zone behind a shopping center. The officer noted in his report that your vehicle is also your residence. Is that correct? Yes, sir, James confirms quietly. It's a 1987 Chevy. She's old, but she runs. Keeps me out of the weather mostly. And where do you shower? Where do you eat? Where do you go during the day? James shifts uncomfortably. There's a truck stop about 5 miles away. They let me shower there sometimes if I can pay the $10. I eat at the soup kitchen on Providence Street when they're open. During the day, I mostly just drive around, try to stay warm, maybe park at the library and read. They're nice there. Don't make me leave as long as I'm quiet. Judge Caprio has to pause to compose himself. Mr. Patterson, you're 71 years old. You're living in a car, showering at truck stops when you can afford it, eating at soup kitchens. This isn't how we should treat our veterans. This isn't how we should treat anyone, but especially not someone who served their country with such distinction. James's voice is resigned. Sir, there's a lot of us out there. I'm not special, just another vet who couldn't make it work after coming home. But that's exactly the point, Mr. Patterson. There shouldn't be a lot of you out there. Judge Caprio's voice becomes passionate. We spend billions of dollars on defense, on weapons, on wars, but we can't provide housing for the men and women who fought those wars. We can't provide adequate mental health care for veterans suffering from PTSD. We can't make sure that every person who wore our country's uniform has a warm bed and regular meals. That's not just wrong, it's a national disgrace. Judge Caprio opens a folder that's been sitting on his bench. Mr. Patterson, I did some research after I saw your case on my docket this morning. I called the VA. I called veteran service organizations. I wanted to understand how a decorated Marine ends up homeless at 71 years old. Do you know what I found? James shakes his head, looking confused and a bit worried about where this is going. I found that you're receiving disability benefits of $850 a month for service-connected disabilities, including PTSD, diabetes, and heart disease. I found that you've been on a waiting list for VA supportive housing for 18 months. 18 months, Mr. Patterson. You've been homeless for 3 years, on a waiting list for 1.5 years, and nobody has done anything to help you. I found that you go to the VA hospital for your medications, but declined additional mental health services because you said other veterans needed them more than you did. I found that you volunteer at the soup kitchen, where you eat that on your veteran's disability income of less than $900 a month, you still donate your time to help others. The courtroom is transfixed. This isn't a typical parking violation case anymore. This is Judge Caprio using his platform to expose a systemic failure, to put a human face on the statistics about veteran homelessness, to force everyone listening to confront an uncomfortable truth about how America treats its heroes. Judge Caprio continues, his voice heavy with emotion. Mr. Patterson, I also found that this isn't your first citation. In the past 3 years, you've received 4 parking tickets for sleeping in your vehicle. 4 times you've been cited for having nowhere to sleep. 4 times you've appeared in court, apologized, promised to pay fines you can't afford, and then gone right back to living in your car because you have nowhere else to go. And every time you've taken responsibility, shown up to court, never complained, never made excuses. You've conducted yourself with the same honor and dignity you showed in the Marine Corps, even though the country you served has given you nothing but citations and broken promises. James is crying openly now, his shoulders shaking. Sir, I just want to pay my fine and go. I don't want to be a burden on anyone. A burden? Judge Caprio's voice breaks completely. Mr. Patterson, you're not a burden. You're a hero who's been failed by every system that was supposed to support you. The burden isn't on you, it's on us. It's on our society that sends young men to war and then forgets about them when the parades are over. It's on our government that makes promises to veterans and then underfunds the programs meant to keep those promises. It's on every person who walks past a homeless veteran on the street and doesn't see the medals hidden under that tattered jacket. Judge Caprio stands up again and removes his judicial robe, an unprecedented gesture that shocks everyone in the courtroom. Underneath, he's wearing a simple suit. He walks down from the bench, approaching James not as a judge, but as a fellow human being. Mr. Patterson, your parking citation is dismissed. You will not pay a fine. You will not pay court costs. Any previous parking citations you've received for sleeping in your vehicle are also dismissed as of this moment. James looks up in shock. Sir, you don't have to do that. I broke the rules. No, Mr. Patterson, we broke the rules. We broke our promise to you. Judge Caprio places his hand on James's shoulder. More than that, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to use my position as a judge to make some phone calls that should have been made a long time ago. You're not going back to living in your car. Not today. Not ever again. Judge Caprio turns to his court officer. James, please call the director of the Providence Veterans Center and tell him I need him here immediately. Then call the mayor's office and tell them Judge Caprio needs emergency housing assistance for a homeless veteran. Tell them if it's not available in the next hour, I'll be calling the media to ask them why a decorated Marine is sleeping in his car while we have empty beds in city facilities. The courtroom erupts in spontaneous applause. People are standing, clapping, crying. James stands at the defendants stand completely overwhelmed, unable to process what's happening. This isn't how the world has treated him for the past 50 years. This isn't the dismissal, the indifference, the contempt he's grown accustomed to receiving. Judge Caprio isn't finished. He addresses the courtroom now, using this moment as a platform. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look at Mr. Patterson. Really look at him. He's wearing medals that represent courage under fire, sacrifice, and service to his country. But he's also carrying a garbage bag with everything he owns because he has nowhere to call home. This is happening in America in 2024. This is happening in every city, in every state. The thousands of veterans who did everything we asked of them and received nothing in return. Judge Caprio's voice becomes passionate, almost angry. If this makes you uncomfortable, good, it should make you uncomfortable. If this breaks your heart, good, your heart should be broken. And if you're wondering What you can do about it, I'm going to tell you. Contact your representatives. Demand better funding for veteran services. Volunteer at veteran organizations. And most importantly, when you see a homeless person on the street, don't look away. Look at them. See them. Because that person might be a hero who fought for your freedom and deserves better than your indifference. 40 minutes later, the director of the Providence Veterans Center arrives at the courthouse with a case manager. They've arranged emergency placement in a transitional housing facility specifically for homeless veterans. It's not permanent, but it's a warm bed, 3 meals a day, and access to the services James needs. The mayor's office calls to confirm they've expedited James's application for permanent supportive housing, moving him from the 18-month waiting list to immediate priority status. Judge Caprio walks James out of the courtroom personally, carrying the garbage bag because James's hands are shaking too much. Outside the courthouse, a small group of veterans who heard about the case has gathered. They're members of the local VFW post, and they've brought clothing, toiletries, and a check for $500 to help James get started in his new housing. One veteran, a man about James's age with a Vietnam veteran's ball cap, approaches and salutes. "Welcome home, brother. It's 50 years late, but welcome home." James returns the salute, tears streaming down his face, and the two veterans embrace two men who went to war together in spirit, if not in person, who understand things that civilians never will, who recognize in each other the scars that never fully heal. The gathering crowd watches this reunion in reverent silence, witnessing a moment of recognition that should have happened decades ago. The video of James's courtroom hearing goes viral within hours. But this isn't typical viral entertainment. This is footage that makes people angry, sad, and motivated to act. Within 24 hours, Judge Caprio's phone is ringing constantly with offers of help for James specifically and homeless veterans generally. A local businessman offers to donate a fully furnished apartment rent-free for 2 years. A car dealership offers a newer, more reliable vehicle. The VA hospital calls to schedule comprehensive care appointments. Dozens of veteran organizations reach out with services, support, and funding. But the impact extends far beyond one veteran. Within a week, Providence announces a new initiative to identify and house all homeless veterans in the city within 90 days. The mayor creates a task force to streamline veteran housing applications. The city council approves emergency funding for veteran services. Rhode Island's congressional delegation holds a press conference promising to fight for increased VA funding. And across the country, other cities start asking themselves why they haven't done the same. James moves into transitional housing that first night, but he can't sleep in the bed. After 3 years of sleeping in a car, the bed feels too soft, too exposed. He sleeps on the floor next to the bed with his jacket draped over him like a blanket. But it's a clean floor in a warm room. And for the first time in years, James sleeps through the night without waking up cold, scared, or wondering if someone's going to knock on his car window and tell him to move. 6 months after his court appearance, James is living in permanent supportive housing, a small one-bedroom apartment in a building specifically for formerly homeless veterans. He has furniture donated by community members. He has a kitchen where he cooks his own meals. He has a bathroom where he can shower every day. And on his small living room table, in a place of honor, sits his photo album, the one that traveled with him in that garbage bag for 3 years now, displayed openly, because he finally has a home where his memories can rest. Judge Caprio visits James several times over the following months, not as a judge, but as a friend. They have coffee, talk about James's time in the Marines, discuss the progress being made on veteran homelessness. During one visit, James shows Judge Caprio a letter he's written to other homeless veterans, sharing his story and encouraging them to seek help. I want them to know it's not too late, James explains. I thought I was forgotten, that I didn't matter anymore. But you showed me that someone still cares. If one person cares enough to help me, maybe there are others out there who care too. Judge Caprio helps James get that letter published in veteran publications across the country. It reaches thousands of homeless veterans, many of whom are inspired to reach out for services they'd given up on. James becomes an informal advocate, speaking at veteran events, sharing his story, helping other homeless veterans navigate the systems that once seemed impossible to him. The man who believed he had nothing left to give discovers that his greatest service to his country comes not in combat, but in using his story to help other forgotten warriors find their way home. 1 year after his courtroom appearance, James stands before the Providence City Council receiving a Community Service Award. He's gained 30 pounds of healthy weight. His hair is neatly trimmed. He's wearing clean clothes and the same military jacket, now professionally cleaned and mended with those medals shining bright. When he speaks, his voice is stronger, more confident, carrying the authority of a Marine who's finally remembered who he was before the world broke him. A year ago, I stood in Judge Caprio's courtroom expecting to be judged and sentenced, James says. Instead, I was seen for the first time in decades. Someone looked at me and saw not just a homeless man, but a veteran, a human being, someone who mattered. Judge Caprio didn't just dismiss my parking ticket, he dismissed the shame I've been carrying for 50 years, the belief that I was worthless, the conviction that I deserved to be forgotten. He reminded me that I still have value, that my service still matters, that I still have something to contribute. James pauses, looking directly at Judge Caprio, who sits in the audience with tears in his eyes. Sir, you saved my life. Not the way I saved lives in Vietnam with a rifle, but in a way that matters just as much. You use your position, your voice, and your compassion to shine a light on a problem everyone wants to ignore. And because you refuse to look away, hundreds of veterans in this city now have homes. Thousands across the country have been inspired to seek help. You didn't just help me, you started a movement. Judge Caprio, in his response, emphasizes that James is the real hero of this story. Mr. Patterson reminded all of us of a debt we can never fully repay, the judge says. We send young people to war, ask them to do terrible things, and then expect them to come home and seamlessly reintegrate into society as if war doesn't change you forever. Mr. Patterson served his country with distinction, came home to a nation that spit on him, struggled for decades with wounds both visible and invisible. And through it all, he never lost his sense of honor, duty, and responsibility. That's not failure, that's heroism of the highest order. 2 years after the courtroom hearing, James receives a letter from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. It's an official apology for the failures in the system that left him homeless, an acknowledgement that no veteran should wait 18 months for housing assistance, and a notification that his case has been used to create new protocols for prioritizing homeless veterans in crisis. The letter includes a certificate of appreciation for his advocacy work helping other homeless veterans. James frames both documents and hangs them next to his military commendations, proof that his service to his country didn't end in 1973. It just took a different form. James's story becomes part of the curriculum at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard used to teach future policymakers about the human cost of bureaucratic inefficiency and the power of individual advocacy to spark systemic change. Law schools use the courtroom video to teach future judges about the discretion they have to look beyond the letter of the law to the human circumstances behind each case. Social work programs used James's case to illustrate the importance of meeting people where they are, seeing past the external circumstances to the person underneath. But perhaps most importantly, James's story reaches other homeless veterans across America who, like him, believed they were forgotten and didn't matter anymore. The Providence Veterans Center reports that in the year following James's court appearance, requests for services from homeless veterans increased by 300%. Many of those veterans specifically cited James's story as the reason they finally reached out for help. If it's not too late for him, they said, maybe it's not too late for me either. This case became more than a dismissed parking ticket or a viral video. It became a national conversation about how America treats its veterans, about the promises we make when we send young people to war, and the obligations we have when they come home. It forced people to confront an uncomfortable truth, that every city in America has veterans sleeping on the streets, that every community has heroes who are forgotten, and that every one of us has a responsibility to do better. The story of James William Patterson, the forgotten veteran who moved Judge Caprio to tears, reminds us that behind every homeless person is a story we don't see. Behind every parking violation is a human being struggling with circumstances we can't imagine. And behind every citation is an opportunity for compassion instead of judgment. James served his country with honor, was abandoned by the systems meant to support him, and ultimately found salvation not through bureaucracy, but through one judge who refused to treat him like just another case number. And guys, in the comments below, tell us about the veterans in your life. Who are the heroes you know who serve their country? Have you seen homeless veterans in your community? What can we do to make sure no veteran is forgotten? Because James Patterson proved that it's never too late to come home, never too late to get help, and never too late for a grateful nation to finally say thank you in a way that actually matters. If this story moved you, if James's journey from homelessness to hope touched your heart, share this video with everyone who cares about veterans, everyone who's ever served, and everyone who needs to understand that the true measure of a nation isn't how we treat our heroes in parades, but how we treat them when the parades are over and the cameras are gone. Subscribe for more stories that prove the power of compassion, the importance of seeing people, not just circumstances, and the truth that sometimes the most important thing a judge can do is remind us all of debts we can never fully repay, but must never stop trying to honor. And remember Judge Caprio's wisdom. James Patterson didn't fail his country, we failed him. He served with honor, came home broken, and spent 50 years waiting for someone to care enough to help. That shouldn't take a viral video or a judge's intervention. That should be automatic, immediate, and guaranteed for every person who ever wore our nation's uniform. James taught us that veterans aren't statistics in government reports. They're heroes who deserve better than our indifference, better than our excuses, and better than having to sleep in their cars while waiting for help that may never come.